Here's where I really am curious, like what exactly you think Trump did on vaccination, because the Pfizer vaccine was developed by Turkish immigrants to Germany. The Moderna vaccine was sequenced before Donald Trump even knew what was going on with the pandemic. So like, what exactly did Trump do on the vaccines? Maybe we can figure it out.
Well, I think just pushing on every lever of the government to get that done. I mean, Operation Warp Speed, even Dr. Fauci's boss, Dr. Francis Collins of the NIH, has said that Operation Warp Speed deserves a lot of credit.
But what did he do to push it?
And they mocked him for that.
Who did he push, though? What did he push?
In this video, David Pakman obliterates MAGA puppet Amanda Makki's delusions. Amanda Makki came in with the usual MAGA spin, trying to paint Trump as the mastermind behind vaccine rollout and a champion of conservative policy. But the second David Pakman presses her with actual facts, she just completely fell apart. She couldn't name a single regulation Trump lifted, couldn't explain what he actually did, and instead will just keep repeating the same vague nonsense about Operation Warp Speed. So make sure to stick around till the end to see how David Pakman obliterates MAGA puppet Amanda Makki's delusions.
Well, I can't say exactly what he pushed. It didn't work in the Trump administration. But what I can say is that when he said every day we're working through Operation Warp Speed to get this done, everything that comes together through the government, whether it's lifting regulations or making it easier to get through the chambers of government. I worked in Congress for, a decade, and it's not easy to just get through a very clunky federal government and bureaucratic system.
But Amanda, what regulations
ultimately resulted in vaccines?
You're going to have to give me something specific, because so far you said you don't actually know, but Trump said he was working hard, which often means watching Fox News and tweeting. What regulations were lifted to make this happen more quickly?
Look, I'm not going to give specifics because I don't know exactly what he did, and he never said what he did.
Right. So you don't know he did anything.
I'm sorry?
You can't really say he did anything then.
I think that's absolutely false. Now, you can look back and say, well, he said this or he said that, and that wasn't true. But what the ultimate result was of these vaccines coming to market, I don't think you can deny that.
Deny which part? That the vaccines were made?
That the vaccines were made in record time. In record time, they were made. And I am sure that there are regulations that were lifted. There were things within the government that were done by this administration to ensure that happened with record speed. I mean, usually it takes a decade.
Not for mRNA vaccines.
And therapeutics to come to market.
Not for mRNA vaccines. All right, let's move on, Amanda, because I do have other things I want to talk about. But if at some point there's something specific you can tell me Trump did, rather than just he was claiming that he was doing stuff, we will report it.
It's not about claiming. I mean, even when the NIH head, like I said, who is Dr. Fauci's boss, said Operation Warp Speed deserves credit.
Yeah.
He didn't say Pfizer deserves credit. He said Operation Warp Speed. Operation Warp Speed was a function of the Trump administration.
Yes. Now, the two vaccines that were first approved weren't part of it. They did pre-purchase vaccines, but fine. Okay, good.
So David Pakman just asked one simple question. What did Trump actually do? And Amanda just completely falls apart from that. She can't name a single regulation, can't say who Trump pushed, and her only defense was he said he was working on it. That's it. She literally admits she has no idea what Trump did, but still insists he deserves credit. She's just playing through the classic MAGA playbook, just blind loyalty and no facts. Then her argument just collapses when she pivots to Operation Warp Speed deserving credit. But as Pakman points out, the first two vaccines weren't even a part of it. She's just scrambling all over the place at this point, and Pakman just keeps shutting her down completely.
Let's talk a little bit about policy. My interpretation of the Republican Party right now, and basically since the pandemic, is that it's essentially a party of no. It's we don't want to do infrastructure. We don't want to do coronavirus guidelines. We don't want to do DACA. We don't want to do tax reform. We don't want to. So there's been really no substantive proposals of policy of what they want. Certainly, we don't want to do any changes to gun legislation. Now, I've said, I don't know that it's a bad strategy for Republicans. And what I mean by that is when you look at a candidacy like Madison Cawthorn, for example, his aide or his staffer straight up said, we're not running a policy office. We're running a communications office. It's memes and tweets and talking about I can put two guns on my wheelchair and all this sort of stuff. So my question is, Do you think that this is a viable long-term strategy? It might actually be. Like, I don't know that the Republican Party really needs policy given who's voting for them right now.
Well, the Republican Party doesn't control a single lever of the government in Washington right now.
But the last 2 years of the Trump administration, they did.
They had the Senate.
And the White House.
They had the White House and they had the Senate.
Yeah.
And the House was controlled by Democrats.
Right.
So if you're talking about right now, because you were talking about topics for right now, because certainly Trump tried to do infrastructure and the Democrats said no. But if you're looking at issues right now, look, Mitt Romney did an interview and, Mitt Romney is the king of rhinos, I guess you could say. I mean, he would probably be the most moderate, the most willing to work with Democrats. And even he has said that going at this alone on the coronavirus bill, relief bill, was wrong. He and I believe it was 9 other Republican senators visited with the president at the beginning of February and said, Mr. President, let's pare this bill down. Mr. President, we have other ideas. And President Biden not only did he not listen, he didn't pay attention to a single one of their interests. And it sounds like staff was involved in this.
Yeah.
So be it. The point is, if you want to look back on President Trump, he passed 5 coronavirus bills with bipartisan support, and President Biden didn't do that with bipartisan support.
But Amanda, that's an indictment of Republicans. That's an indictment. The fact, you're absolutely right. When it was Trump saying we have to get money to businesses and the American people, Democrats didn't say we are going to deny this to Trump merely because he's in the other party, because the American people need it. When Democrats said, OK, well, now it's us, we'll do a relief bill that's very similar to what Trump did, Republicans said we're not participating at all. So what you've just said is arguably the biggest indictment of the obstructionist Republicans that I can imagine.
I think you're misinterpreting what I said.
No, I don't think so.
Using your own facts.
So now David Pakman exposes the Republican Party's strategy. It's all about blocking everything instead of offering real policies. Infrastructure, no. Immigration reform, no. They just oppose everything while pushing out more outrage. Amanda dodges the point and complains about Biden ignoring Republicans, but Pakman just catches her slipping. Republicans had power under Trump and still got nothing done. Pakman just flips her whole argument back on her. She just tries blaming Democrats, but all she does is prove Republicans are obstructionists. She just has no way out, and David Pakman just keeps shutting her argument down. She keeps trying to prove her point, but David Pakman just keeps calling out on her BS.
Because what I said is that the Republicans went to visit with President Biden, and he dismissed everything that they said. He didn't take a single thing into account. He didn't even work with them. He didn't even come to the table and say, let's sit down and talk. They had
what concessions did Trump make to Democrats?
And he largely blamed it on staff, as did Republicans, the staff saying, we're not interested.
But what concessions did Trump make to Democrats on the COVID bills?
Kennedy Center funding, certainly other pieces of the bill that ultimately the law that Republicans were raked over the coals for. I know
Kennedy Center, wasn't that like $3 million or something?
It doesn't matter. It's the fact that, this is what's interesting to me.
Yeah.
President Trump was impeached by the House. And then 3 months later, he has Nancy Pelosi sit down with Stephen Mnuchin, because Trump and her didn't have a relationship.
Right.
And he said, sit down and work something out for the American people. And they did. That's leadership. You don't pout and say, I don't like her, so I'm not going to work with her. I think that's what Biden did. Biden said, I don't have to work with you guys because we have 50-50 and Kamala will be the tie-breaking vote. So I don't have to work with you guys. So I'm not going to.
Right. And Trump, but I think isn't the difference, Amanda, that Trump would have done that if he had had the luxury of having the House. He just didn't. That's not anything to, it was just a reality.
We can't work in hypotheticals, but I look at someone who was impeached in the House by Nancy Pelosi, and 3 months later, she sat down with his Treasury Secretary and hammered out a bill for the American people.
But the reason she had to sit down with Mnuchin was Trump, didn't want to play in the sandbox with her anymore because of the impeachment. It's sort of like a criticism of Trump, really.
He had his proxy work with her. The ultimate result was a relief bill, wasn't it?
Yeah, just like with Biden, right? The ultimate result was a COVID relief bill.
A partisan COVID relief bill.
Is it partisan if 75% of Americans support it? That's tens of millions of Republicans. What's partisan?
Relief, of which 90% of this bill does not go to COVID relief.
We've debunked, I've debunked that extensively. I don't want to jump into that.
And there it is. Amanda Makki tried every excuse in the book, but David Pakman just tore through all of them. She tries to paint Biden as the problem while completely ignoring that Republicans had power and still did nothing. She brought up Trump's so-called leadership, but Pakman just shut it down with facts, showing that their entire strategy is just obstruction and excuses. At the end of the day, Republicans had control, they had the opportunity, and they still failed to deliver. No matter how much Amanda dodged and deflected, she just couldn't escape the reality that Pakman laid out. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and comment your thoughts down below.